Most engineers think that they can explain their project in the interview, and they can up to a point. That point is always the second question. The first question, that is, tell me about your system. This is a question that most candidates would handle fine. They describe the architecture, the input to output, they'll describe the components in a sequence. They will sound prepared, obviously, because they have prepared and they have rehearsed the walkthrough as well. And that's where the interviewer will ask the question, which is something like, why not top 10 instead of top 5? What happens to your system when 50 users starts hitting your API in a concurrent way? Or the one that ends more interviews than any other is, what was the biggest failure that you had to fix in the system? And that's where we observe that the answers getting changed. The answers starts getting slower. It sounds more generic and general right now. It starts becoming less specific. The candidate will pivot back to what the system does instead of what they decided. The explanation that they just gave 60 seconds ago now has sudden visible gaps. Now, that's the tell the interviewer was actually looking for. It's not about whether you can describe the architecture, whether you understand the system that you have built. And today, I'm going to show you exactly where and why this collapse happened and what the interviewer is actually hearing when it does. So let's get started, guys. Now, let me do one thing. Let me play back the standard project explanation because it's almost always the same shape. I'm sure you can relate as well. So, explanation would go something like, so my system is a rack pipeline. The user will send in the query. It goes to my API layer. We embed it using my OpenAI embeddings. We'll do a similarity search in Pinecone vector database. We retrieve top 5 most relevant documents and we pass that context and we send that query to my GPT model so that it will generate the response. And we also have a front end developed in React and we deployed the solution on AWS. Now, this sounds great. It's clear, it's organized. The candidate knows their system, but this is what the interviewer just learned. The interviewer have just understood that you can describe the data flow. You have used the common tools in a common order. You know the names of the components that you have integrated. Now, what the interviewer did not learn is why any of those choices were made, what alternatives existed, and why did you use them? I mean, what was the point in choosing that when there were alternatives available? And what happens when any part of that chain fails or when any part degrades? What you know about the system's behavior under conditions that you didn't control in staging environment? The explanation sounds like a complete description. What you just did is basically a description about your architecture. It's a description of a structure, but that structure is not same as your understanding about the system. Now, this is a point where it gets uncomfortable because I want to run you through these three most common follow-up questions that appear in almost every strong interview loop, especially for the experienced AI engineering. And this is the one that show you as what happens to most candidates when they actually hear this follow-up question. So the first follow-up question is, why did you choose maybe top 5 retrieval? Why not top 3 or top 10? Now, what I've seen, the most candidates giving the responses, oh, well, top 5 was a default choice. It seemed like a good number and it was working well for a system. And we tried other values as well, but this is something that worked well. Now, when you mention this, the interviewer is hearing as, you don't know why this number is. You just set a parameter and you moved on. You have no evaluation data. You cannot predict what would happen if you changed it. Now, the second most follow-up question is, What happens to your system when 50 concurrent requests starts arriving? Now, the answer that most candidates would give over here is, well, we didn't specifically test for that because our system should be able to handle it because it's deployed on AWS cloud. We'll add more instances so that we'll keep our systems running. Now, this is the most common answer that I've seen candidates giving. And what the interviewer will hear is, you have not modeled your system's behavior under load. You don't know your saturation point. You don't know what breaks first. You deployed something without understanding what happens when it meets the real traffic. And the third follow-up question, now this is the most, I'll say the question that breaks most of them in the interview. What was the biggest failure that you had to fix in the system? So for this answer, I've seen most candidates first, they will think for a few seconds and then they'll simply make a statement that says as, oh, we didn't face any major issues. The system worked pretty well because we were using AWS. Now, when I hear that answer, I'll stop. I'll stop pushing. Or if I'm an interviewer, I'll stop pushing, or any interviewer would stop pushing. The reason because it's not because we don't believe in that answer, it's because the answer will confirm the initial hypothesis the interviewer had. Either the candidate never operated the system under the real condition where failures would have been visible, or they did, but they are just presenting the highlight reel and they don't realize that this highlights about the project that they have worked. It signals nothing at the senior engineer level. So, one thing that I want you to remember is this, guys. Nothing at scale works cleanly the first time. If your project had no failures, it was not a project, it was a demo that never met the real condition. Now, why this fails? Why is it these approaches are going to fail? So, here's the thing, guys, there are two kinds of knowledge. This is something that you can have about a system. One is a structured knowledge, and the other one is a system knowledge. Structure is about when is it that my system is going to work, but you get the system knowledge when it breaks. So, structure is all about components, tools, data flow, what it does. And system is why it is designed that way. Where is it that it will start debugging, or where is it that it will start degrading? What will change after my first production failure? The interviewer is testing the second one, your system knowledge. The follow-up questions were designed specifically for that. The follow-up question of why are you using top five in your rack pipeline? It's about trying to understand as, do you have the evaluation data behind that particular parameter that you have chosen? Or did you just leave the default value that was there? What happens under the load? That means, have you modeled your system's behavior, or did you just deploy and did you just simply hope that it will work fine? And when the question was about what broke in production, it's about trying to understand as, have you actually operated something which is past the demo phase? Now, none of these three questions are trick questions. They are asking about the reasoning that should naturally exist behind the explanation that you just gave 60 seconds ago. The reason that most engineers would feel that it's hard because most engineers build those systems towards a working demo, not toward a defensible system. The reasoning layer was never built. So when the interviewer probes for it, there's nothing there. And that's why I've seen candidates failing in the follow up questions. Now, let me show you the difference and make it more concrete. A surface level answer would be something like, oh, I have used the top file retrieval with Pinecone vector database, and we have used GPT-4 model. It retrieved the relevant documents and it answered the question. Now, for the follow-up question as why top 5? Well, the surface level answer would say as, oh, it felt right. The default value worked fine and we didn't have to do additional work and we were interested in shipping. So when you mention these answers, the interviewer has now confirmed their hypothesis, where he'll know that you don't know the reasoning, you have no idea about the evaluation, there's no awareness of the trade-off. The candidate just implemented a pipeline. They don't own the system. Now, when we talk about a deeper answer, now it's the same project and we'll explain one level deeper. We'll not go broad, but we'll start by explaining something as, oh, we started with top 10 retrieval. The problem was that our context window was getting filled up with documents that were not directly relevant for the query. The model was actually getting confused by the noise documents which were appearing at the bottom retrieved set. So what we did, we ran a systematic evals at top 3, top 5, and top 10. The precision was highest of top 5. And we found that the top 3 recovered the cleaner answers. But when we were dealing with the multi-hop questions, that's where the overall spread across the documents was not being captured in top 3. And the top 10 recovered the recall, but the generation quality was getting degraded. So what we chose? We chose the top 5 because it's the best trade-off for our use case that we are working. Now, if the interviewer comes up with the follow-up question as, what happens if your corpus doubles? Now, when this is a question, the candidate has something to describe the reason because he or she has already built the system. They have already way past the demo. They understand the relationship between the corpus size, recall, precision, and its relevance for the top K parameter. And they know that whatever the decision that they have made for the top K would again require revisiting. So they'll have a hypothesis about where the system would break. Now, if you take a look into both the project, both are referring to the same project, but sending a complete different signal. And this same pattern that we have applied right now for the RAG, it can be applied to anywhere like distributed cache, event pipeline, model serving layer. The question is always the same. Can you define the number? Can you define the threshold? Can you define the architecture decision? Or did you just set it and did you just move on? Now, that's the key difference between describing the structure and demonstrating the understanding. If you can demonstrate your understanding, you are sending a very strong signal. Okay? Now, this is where I've seen most candidates stop. There's a pattern that I've seen across a lot of project explanation. The engineers will stop their thinking at a point where the system will start, let's say the system will start working and they'll say, okay, I'm good. It hit production. The metrics were acceptable. I'll move on to the next thing. But the reasoning layer, why this works, and what is the scenario that it will start degrading? What is it that you would change if your load gets doubled or your data distribution gets shifted? That's the one that will develop if you keep pushing after it works. So these are the insights that you would get if you actually operate it. If you just watch it fail in the ways that you didn't predict, that's where your real learning would happen. It's not the scenario where you will just confirm whether it's working or not. And most production system that got to working never got to understood. It's not because the engineers were not capable. It's because the incentive was to just ship and not to know about the system. But in the interviews, you're going to be tested about what is your understanding about the system, not about can you describe the system. Now, this interviewer can tell this difference in just 90 seconds of these follow up questions. So, the key things that I want you to remember right now is very simple. If your explanation cannot survive the follow up question, it means you have just understood the structure and not the system at all. Now, when I say structure, it consists of components, flow, tool names, and what it does. System is a place where you understand the decision rationale, rejected alternatives, known failure mode, and what changed after something broke, and why your current design is better than the previous one. The strong project explanation, they'll not list more, they go one level, I'll say one layer deeper on less things. One decision which is named precisely with the constraint that actually drove it, the alternatives that you considered, the consequence of that choice. That's more of a signal than a complete architecture walkthrough where you will just list the tools and the functionalities that you have developed. So the test for yourself is simple. Take the most important design decision that you have made in your project. Whatever the choice that you have done, just ask the question as, can it hold under real condition? Can you defend it under why that and not the alternative? If the answer is we tried and it worked, you have just have the structure knowledge and not the system knowledge. And that's a gap that I want you to fill from this video. Take a pause and start working on it. So the three test questions that we've talked about. So it's just remember your project explanation is not about those components and flow, it's the decision, trade off, and failures. And those three follow up questions are actually representing that. If it defends the choices, that's the understanding. If it mentions about something that didn't work as expected, that's the strongest signal of all because it means that you have operated something past the demo phase. So the follow up question is not an attack, it's an invitation. The interviewer is asking you to show them one layer deeper, and most candidates do not have that layer ready. It's not because they're not capable, but because they build toward working, not toward understood. So here is a truth that I want you to sit with. The follow up question is coming whether you're ready for it or not. And most people would actually find out that they are not ready by being inside the interview when the answer slows down, when it gets vague, and the interviewer will stop pushing because the interviewer have already confirmed their hypothesis. Now that's a expensive place to find your gap. If you're realizing that your project explanation or your topic explanation do not hold up under the real follow-up, that you can maybe describe the structure but struggle to defend the reasoning, I've broken down the exact things as how you need to structure these answers in the Agentic AI interview playbook. And if you want to build a system where that reasoning layer exists because you built it end to end, not because you just rehearsed it, now that's the kind of work that we do it inside the bootcamp. Both the links are in the description. Subscribe to our channel for more such insightful content on Agentic AI. Let me know what you think in the comment section, and I'll see you next time.